Hi, and welcome to our Fireside Chat, Comfortably Numb. We'd like to ask you, have we become comfortably numb? In today's world of continued and escalating threat sophistication, overload of information, overwhelming signs of complacency, and lack of diversity in both thought and practice, have we just become numb to it all? Our panel, using the song titles of the rock band Queen, will dive into these aspects. Overload, too much data, oversaturation of messaging, overstated claims, threat sophistication, and another day, another vulnerability, another day, another breach. Is this our wake-up call? And by the way, who doesn't look to Queen song titles when you're trying to frame a cybersecurity conference abstract, right? My name is Jeannette, and I am an executive with the Cyber Threat Alliance, and I've been working in the cybersecurity industry in various roles for over 25 years. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks so much, Jeannette, and thanks for all of you for coming to hang out with us. My name is Selena Larson. I'm a cyber threat intelligence analyst at Dragos. We are an industrial cyber security company, and I have worked in the cyber realm for a while. In my previous role, I was actually a cybersecurity journalist. Dragos is a very happy to partner with CTA, and we're super stoked to be here chatting with you guys today.
I'm Kathi Whitbey. I am the Unit 42 program manager with Palo Alto Networks, and I've been with Palo Alto Networks for about 5 years now, and have had a wonderful opportunity, along with Jeannette and some many other wonderful people, to help build and make the Cyber Threat Alliance to what it is today. And really happy to be here today with you ladies. All right, so let's kick off this conversation. As we mentioned, we're going to be using the song titles from Queen music, and we'll kick it off with one of the most relevant topics, which is I'm going slightly mad. And basically, to think about that, it's complacency at its finest, when the average person is being inundated with information from all sides, whether it's media, it's their security teams, it's IT support, even their own credit card companies are giving them information about how to stay safe in the cybersecurity world, to a point where it feels like nothing matters anymore. It's going to happen to me anyway, right? And then another song from Queen, I Want to Break Free. So after we talk about all of this going slightly mad, how do we break free from all of this? And how do we get away from that mindset that it's just another day, another vulnerability?
Yeah, Kathi, I don't know about you ladies, but I am going slightly mad, right? We're living in challenging times. I mean, the global COVID pandemic's driven a rapid shift for much of the planet to be working and going to school from home. The shift has brought an unprecedented opportunity for cyber criminals to exploit vulnerabilities and human weaknesses, and exploiting us they are. Between the pandemic, a major US election campaign, an escalation of really long simmering debates around race, digital lures and phishing emails have practically written themselves, and not a day goes by that we don't hear about a new breach or attack. Technology is everywhere, and the result of bad security is hugely impactful. It's no secret that the cyber criminals collect intelligence, prepare their attacks, and adapt to changes in real time. The industry needs to be working together. We have to do a better job in walking our talk about protecting the ecosystem overall. And never has the need been greater for cybersecurity leaders to join forces to mitigate the threat of the cyber activity that's being posed to citizens, corporations, and governments around the world today. And then when you add to all that, the just overwhelming amount of information we're inundated with every day, security alerts, articles, notifications, vulnerabilities, patches, it's coming at us from many, many different directions. It can be easily overwhelming. And how do you know what to focus on? How do you know what to prioritize? It's simply making one go slightly mad, just trying to keep on top of it all.
Yes, it's, yeah, you're absolutely right. And I kind of want to point out here that, information security and cybersecurity, even though a lot of it largely happens online in the cyber world, so much of it is very human. There are people at the end of our smartphones, end of our laptops, end of our, whatever computers, even our smart cars, smart homes, but it's fundamentally human. And everything that's going on right now, makes humans fear for their safety, fear for their health, be worried about their future. There's a lot of uncertainty going on right now. And adversaries are hijacking that. They're preying on that fear, that uncertainty, and, adapting to, these new opportunities. So I think, I've said before, having empathy for the user, right? And I think that that's something that people have recently especially kind of come to the front and said, InfoSec, we have to be better about having empathy to the end user, having empathy to people who aren't inundated with the sort of cyber threats all the time, who don't necessarily have, the same understanding as we do. But I also kind of want to point out here that, we also have to have empathy for our colleagues and for the community, and approach and hopefully be able to better solve these problems by understanding that information security and cybersecurity is very fundamentally human, and that, the adversaries are human and the people who are working in the space are human. And by approaching it with empathy, kind of with creativity and understanding the challenges, not just from a cyber perspective, but from a global social, economic perspective as well, I think is very important, and can help us move forward through this challenging time.
Yeah, and just to focus on the one aspect of it, it's 2020, right? So what could possibly go wrong? This is something that I hear from lots of people all the time. And this year has certainly seen its share of craziness, from just being locked down all over the world. Everybody's had their own flavor of what it meant to be locked down, this changing statistics that we hear on a regular basis as to what's happening with the pandemic, what's happening with the protests, those types of things around our country. And then so many more people are working from home and going to school from home as well. So the time is ripe for our adversaries to make their move, and they certainly are doing that. Cybersecurity vendors have had to kick into action to shift with corporate security for many of their customers to much larger pools of those workers working from home, as well as these school districts that weren't even in a million years prepared to take an entire school district and put them all online at one time. And with school starting right now and us working from home, we're having to take on new roles, and we're having to do different things within our corporations, our organizations, as well as at home. If we've got kids sitting next to us at the desk because they can't figure out how to get into that Zoom meeting, or they can't figure out how to log into Blackboard or one of those others. So yeah, it is a lot. It is maddening for all of us. And I have to admit that through all of this, I've been extremely impressed with how these companies have been able to stand up to this challenge. And I think we're being pretty successful at addressing these challenges. It's over 6 months that we've been in this pandemic, and so many people have stepped into those new roles that I mentioned. And it's not time for us to relax just because we're working from home all the time. I may wear my pajamas to work most days, but it's not time for me to forget that those adversaries are out there and they're still trying to figure out how to infiltrate our systems. So one of the things that we need to keep in our forefront is, from an individual vendor perspective, is doing what's right for our customers across the globe, as well as building and using the trust relationships that we've already built so that we can continue to share, collaborate, and cooperate so that we can help each other through this pandemic, and that we can come out of this on the other side more resilient.
I appreciate that you brought up the school item, because I know in the news lately, there's been some reporting of students eliciting cyber attacks or disruptions on their schooling environment. And I would like to think that this is just building a generation of kids who are going to be very, very valuable InfoSec professionals in the cybersecurity realm in the future. So although they might be, having some challenging times right now, I hope that ultimately it proves positive that they can use their skills, for good stuff in the future. So trying to keep a positive note here, right? So kind of going back to some of these queen songs that we talked about, the invisible man is a theme, that we had talked about, prepping for this discussion. But, this idea of, from the days of like the anonymous hacktivist collective, to today's more crafty, sophisticated, you have your APT actors, you have a lot more sort of criminal entities and enterprises. how do we even begin to really look at our enemies and the adversaries today? So to kind of posit, we should, kind of discuss today's threat landscape and how the adversaries are in many ways, continuing to outsmart the collective good. And I think, one thing that's interesting to me personally is that, adversaries are always changing. While they might, have sort of the similar behaviors and the similar, TTPs, right, that enable sort of defenders to hunt them and to identify them and to defend against them. Oftentimes, the methods will shift based off of, what's going on and current events. For instance, we discussed, how, phishing lures can be used for COVID, they can be used for the election, right? These sort of current events are guiding adversaries in many ways. And one thing that interests me personally is ransomware adversaries. I feel like, we have 800 different kinds of corporate targeting ransomware these days. And it's not just encrypting, networks anymore. It's, the adversaries are adopting to the fact that corporations have learned, okay, let's keep offline backups. Let's have, incident response plans in place. So when we do get ransomware, we can effectively remediate this and respond without having to pay the ransom. Well, the adversaries are now incorporating the sort of data theft and extortion piece of this as well, where it's like, okay, they've learned to defend against us. So let's add this new piece that makes it a little bit, potentially more difficult. It's like, all right, well, we didn't get to the full encryption piece, but, we still have this thing that we can hold hostage, hold ransom, and make some payment there. So, and then finally, the sort of adversaries, right? Like, that are targeting ICS, industrial control systems. This is something that is relatively new if we're talking sort of cybercrime, cyber threat scale, is that, adversaries are being able to sort of adopt ICS specific mechanisms where they can create malware to target those systems that are very critical systems like electric, oil and gas, manufacturing, these entities that, have these industrial operations that aren't necessarily your phones and laptops, but these other sort of interconnected devices. So, we give names to these invisible adversaries, right? Everyone's name is different, the bears and the APTs and the pandas and everything, the kittens. But yeah, how do we kind of keep track of these, and how can we sort of stay one step ahead of, these adversaries or the sort of invisible men or women?
Yeah, Selena, those excellent points all. The invisible man, the hacker, the bad actor, the adversary, whatever you want to call it, they often seem to have the upper hand, right? And we often make it easy for them. We are building and releasing software with vulnerabilities. It's just really hard to stay ahead of the vulnerability patching game. In fact, I was keeping an informal track list of the number of vulnerabilities that have been patched this year. And as of September, just one vendor alone has released nearly 1,000 patches for vulnerabilities. And that number doesn't include all the vendors by any means. So the overwhelming volume of patches being released is just extremely high. And this is not sustainable for any company, large or small, to keep their heads above. And we still have 3 months of 2020 to go. I mean, 2020 has just been a bad year all around. So the invisible man does have it easy. It doesn't take much for an adversary to outsmart us. Finding vulnerability to exploit is not difficult because we can't nearly patch all those vulnerabilities in time. And I do want to point out that I do know that software vendors are not building vulnerabilities into their programs purposely. Product managers and developers, they have good ideas but sometimes they have roadmap timelines they have to meet. So consequently, software gets released with unchecked vulnerabilities. And there's just simply a growing overemphasis on external bug reward programs where we pay experts to find holes in software after it's released to the public, as opposed to investing in the staff and the resources to limit that release of buggy software to begin with. So I propose the latter, right? Let's turn this around and invest in staff and resources to ensure that software being released to date isn't buggy to begin with.
Jeannette, I agree with you on your points here. It is time that we invest in staffing and resources to tackle the ever-growing threat of the invisible man, our adversaries. Being part of one of the leading analyst groups in cybersecurity today, I see firsthand the amount of activity that is going on behind closed doors from our adversaries. as they discover new ways to infiltrate businesses and individuals. Our researchers uncover and report on the tactics being used, the verticals being targeted, and share this data with the vendors who can roll out protections for all of our customers across the globe. In 2020, we continue to see evolution on the ransomware business model, with data exfiltration and extortion increasing concerns even for organizations with high quality backups. Business email compromise scams continue to rake in millions, if not billions, from fraud conducted against small and medium-sized businesses. The more things change, the more they stay the same. And this is something that we need to keep having conversations about and keep working towards together.
Yeah, so true, Kathy, so true. Let's skew to a new Queen song title, Hammer to Fall. You know, the perception is privacy is now lost. The assumption that corporations have already had all their information out there, data is already freely available, so don't bother reading that privacy policy or work harder to protect yourself. What are your thoughts on that?
As the average person just waits for that hammer to fall, Jeannette, for their data to be part of one of these large corporation breaches, we as cybersecurity professionals need to work harder to change that perception. With time, technology, collaboration, and cooperation, we can begin to tackle this mindset across the ecosystem. Education, to me, starting as young as will actually listen to us, will help us start and help us to strengthen the collective good in cybersecurity. I've run some workshops for young Girl Scouts. Palo Alto Networks has a partnership with the Girl Scouts of the USA, and I was lucky enough to be part of the group of people who helped to develop those badges. And I've done some workshops for these girls, and it's amazing to me how little young people think about the technology and the Internet of Things that they're surrounded by on a regular basis. They have had this generation, they've never known a world without all of this technology. So to them, it's just normal. And to even have one of these kids think about how many computers did you come in contact with on your drive over here today? Starting from when you got up this morning, everything in your house, all the way to when you got over here today to do this workshop. And they don't think about things as computers and as risks. Even from just using, you know, oh, mom and dad set that up for me, so I don't have to worry about it. Well, how much does mom and dad know about setting up that particular device? So without the ability it doesn't occur to them how many computers they come into contact with. And therefore, it's just a different world than what we grew up in. And I think that education and starting young and thinking about those threats as we raise these kids and teach them in schools is one of the ways that we can start tackling this.
I love that the Girl Scouts now have a cybersecurity badge. The little patches, it's so cute. I love it. So to kind of go back, you know, to the hammer to fall piece, right? Like we're just kind of waiting for it. I do think there's a sort of collective acceptance that's like, okay, well, I'm going to get hacked eventually. There's nothing we can do about it. My data is out there, whatever. I'm 100% guilty of this as well, by the way. I'm not, you know, I think probably said those exact words before. But like, I wonder how much of that is a sort of in circle of InfoSec professionals, or, you know, like folks on Twitter, people at, you know, these conferences kind of having these same conversations versus, you know, what's kind of going on in the real world, right? So I do think people genuinely care about this stuff but there are organizations that we put our trust into to safeguard our information, and they're the ones that are getting breached, right? They're the ones that are having these sort of missteps and you know, having our data exposed. So I think, you know, it's important to have individuals be aware of this, have them, like you're saying, start from a very early age and be like, these are all of the things that I'm touching that are collecting my data. This is all of the information that I'm giving to various services. But I think the flip side of it is we also need to hold corporations and these other organizations that are collecting our data, hold them accountable for that. I think GDPR, for instance, the global data protection regulations that were implemented in Europe is a good first start, right? So having these rules and these laws that say, this is how you have to safeguard your data. These are the protections that you must have in place. Implementing major fines for breaking those regulations. I think even earlier today or yesterday, Oregon implemented some very stringent artificial intelligence, facial recognition laws, sort of preventing, abuse of this type of technology. So I think that, there's the folks coming up having a better understanding of this, but the existing technologies and they have to sort of be, safeguarded, and we can be sort of, activists in the community to say, here's what we think the corporations or the governments or whatever should be doing to protect us, and being, advocates for more restrictive guidelines for protecting our data, for ensuring that, these organizations are held accountable for the breaches or the hacks.
And Selena, along that same line, and pointing out another song, a wonderful song from Queen, A Kind of Magic. When we think about that, it's not magic, right? We have the skills, we have the ability to work together collectively to tackle this problem. And thinking about the magic that people think it would actually entail, what are the right skills? What's the diversity that we need to bring into our organizations in order to help solve these problems? Let's move the conversation a little bit more to what is it? What are some of the driving forces behind cybersecurity and the people who collaborate and bring everyone to the table and accelerate us forward faster than us fighting alone? What are some of the more creative ways we can start thinking about problem solving, and where are those who can assist us best? So this is something that I've spent a lot of time talking about because my background isn't necessarily cybersecurity. I've had a lot of different things in my life that I've done. I'm an EMT on the side. I do search and rescue. I've done software development, worked for a lot of the government agencies throughout my career. So I think about that diversity that we need to bring into our environments to help us solve these really difficult problems. I've had the opportunity, as I mentioned before, of working with young people, not only with the Girl Scouts, but also at different school job fairs and things like that. And it's always interesting to me that when you ask kids, you've got your cybersecurity on your table over there and the kids can come talk to you. Kids don't want to come talk to you about cybersecurity. You're not the sexiest person there. It's not the most exciting career that they can think of. So they don't generally want to come over to your table. But the ones who do come over and I ask them about it, I point them in the direction of, well, what is it that you really do want to be? And if somebody says they want to be a nurse, bring that conversation back around. There isn't a hospital in the world that doesn't use technology in order to do their work. And what happens when they are infiltrated or they're attacked or ransomware and they don't have access to their data anymore? Or kids always, I want to be a pilot, or I want to be something really exciting. Well, have you ever looked at the dashboard of an airplane to see what kind of technology is up there? And you think about infiltration of those types of systems. That's one way that I've been able to have better conversations, I think, with these young people, trying to get them to understand that no matter what you do throughout your life going forward from today on, technology is going to be there, and cybersecurity is a real threat for any technology. So the magic that we're talking about is bringing all of those different types of people, the diversity of all these people into one place and getting ideas from everybody to help us solve those problems.
Yeah, great points, Kathy, for sure. When I think of a kind of magic as it pertains to cybersecurity, I go right to what the Cyber Threat Alliance is doing. We're getting the industry to work together for the greater good. CTA has built up this trusted community to facilitate not just daily sharing of threat intelligence, but a trusted platform where hot topics and like critical threat information and details can really be discussed in a loyal environment. When cyber industry collaborates, when we can better put together the complete story of the adversary and their activity and their TTPs, then we can be better able to respond appropriately and timely and shift that power so the industry has the upper hand. Everyone has a piece to the puzzle, And once you put that together, then you can see that overall picture. You know, in the industry, our competitiveness should be on our technologies, not on the intelligence. And all our work around disrupting adversaries should be a collaborative exercise. We should be better as an industry overall working together on this. I did want to touch on diversity as well. You know, when we look at creating a diverse workforce where you bring fresh and, you know, unique ideas to the table and really give folks the chance to express those ideas and that they're listened to, I believe then that we can move the needle. You know, we have to approach solutions with fresh mindsets because what we're doing isn't always working, right? And I propose we do a better job of walking that talk of hiring a diverse workforce. And when I say diversity, I think of it as obviously racial diversity, but cultural backgrounds, you know, age, gender, social economic status, history, education, and even disabilities. You know, we're simply not hiring enough folks with disabilities in the cyber industry. We need to be better. And when you get real people with real world environments providing input, you're going to create and build programs and applications that truly impact society as a whole. You really get to get that out of the box thinking that's going to help us make notable differences. There's no downside to inclusion. It's all positiveness for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think, you know, having diversity on your team, just as your threat intelligence team, for example, just breeds better threat intelligence products. You know, having creativity, coming at things differently, having a different mindset and understanding is really, really valuable from an intelligence perspective. I do kind of want to point out here that, you know, we are a panel of white women, which is awesome. This is a terrific step forward, right? Like you probably, at least I wouldn't have seen that, you know, when I was covering conferences as a journalist like years ago, is like the all male panel, hashtag all male panel. So it's great, right? That it's an all female panel. This is awesome. But I do really want to point out here that diversity efforts in general that have been undertaken by the technology industry, the cybersecurity industry, largely focus on enabling and empowering white women. While sort of leaving other minorities, people with disabilities, like you mentioned, just out of the conversation. And I think that that's something that, you know, we have to acknowledge, and acknowledging my privilege as someone in the industry and trying to do the best that I can to say, you know, bring in more people, to say that the value of people's different backgrounds, race, genders, sexual orientations is super important. And selfishly, it would make my team better. It would bring better intelligence, right? So I think that, you know, we continue to improve, I think, but I definitely think there's a lot more that we can do. And I do want to kind of just give a shout out. I think that there has been some really great conversations going on with hashtag share the mic in cyber. This has been an effort, a total grassroots effort that has really been able to sort of empower people in the cybersecurity space. That Lauren and Camille, I feel bad that I am forgetting their last names, but Lauren over at the Harvard Cyber Organization, and then Camila, who is and very involved in the NatSec community. Of course, I'm on the spot and forget their last names. But something that I think is really cool and interesting is the hashtag share the mic in cyber campaign that is, you know, having these conversations and discussions and encouraging diversity and inclusion within the industry. So we were all talking about this great positivity. So now we're going to take a pivot to something terrible. Sheer heart attack. This is a fun one. So of course it's a great bot, but also staring your board of directors in the face as you explain how we were breached. Sort of, this is your wake up call. This is your sheer heart attack. Something happened and go. How do we approach that? How do we address that? Curious, you know, to your thoughts here.
You know, you talked earlier about empathy and phishing and all, and when I look at like phishing emails today, they're very good. You know, the adversaries have really fine-tuned their approach, and it isn't difficult to see why people fall for them. And bad actors nowadays are even calling people up and telling them that they're the police and that they have a warrant for their arrest unless they pay this money. It's not difficult to see how people get scared and react. before stopping to really think about the situation thoroughly. And the COVID pandemic really brought an extraordinary opportunity to exploit human weaknesses with phishing and some of these other lures. They're really well done, and people are falling for them. You know, we have to honestly do a better job of getting folks to recognize what is phishing, you know, when they are being scammed. All these social engineering tactics are good, and we need to get people to think about what's happening and question if it's really valid or not. And can you imagine, gosh, can you imagine if you're the one that opened a phishing email or did some sort of mistake and caused your company to be breached? I mean, what a sheer heart attack that would be.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I can't even, yeah. That's a great point too, right? Like education is so important, and making sure that people are aware of the threats that are out there. And I think that's a huge value that threat intelligence provides, and that certainly the CTA organization provides as well, is you know, being aware of the adversaries, being armed with the knowledge, leveraging sort of threat intelligence to help guide the cybersecurity decisions within your organization, helping to sort of further educate, you know, the users, and hopefully, you know, build up those building blocks to combat the threats, and to be, you know, more prepared for these type of activities. I do kind of want to point out here, it's interesting because there is a large organization that experienced the sheer heart attack and responded to it really interestingly and pretty impressively is Norsk Hydro. So there's the aluminum manufacturer that is based out of Norway, and they were the victim of the Locker Goga attack last year. It had large disruptions to their operations. It really sort of ground the company to a halt. It came at a very trying time for the organization, as the CEO had recently left the company. So it was a very tumultuous time. And it sounds like, you know, every other story, right? A large corporation gets ransomware, gets hacked, and then, you know, they're thrown into tumult and then have to deal with it. But an interesting way that Norsk was able to sort of resolve that was being very transparent all throughout their incident response activities, all throughout, you know, discussing what was going on, bringing the manufacturing operations back online, bringing their IT back online. The spokespeople for the company were being very open with it, right? Like the executives were saying, this is what happened, here's how we dealt with it. And being able to do that is not only looks good for the company, but it also provides the industry as a whole with a sort of a roadmap. Like, here's how this company did it, and here's how maybe we could do it moving forward. So I think that's really, really interesting lessons learned from that perspective.
And that's a really good example. And I agree with you that if people and corporations can be more transparent when things happen, I mean, one of the biggest risks to our corporations is still the people, right? I come from a background where I worked for the federal government for a long time in classified environments, and we know our biggest adversary was the internal people that we worked with, right? There's always that threat. So being transparent and being able to accept that people do make mistakes, and we all will make a mistake at some point. And hopefully we're not the ones that are going to be the ones that has to, you know, go to our board of directors or to the CEO of our company and say, well, I accidentally clicked on such and such. And, you know, but there are lots of lessons to be learned. And the more that we learn about this, and the more that we educate our employees and still continue, as Selena, as you brought up, that empathy, showing that empathy for those that we work with and those that we work for. I think that will show a lot of success as we move into you know, the next phase of technology and the next phase of cybersecurity.
Well, ladies, let's tackle one more Queen song, and as we wrap up here, I think the most appropriate one is "The Show Must Go On," right? We must continue to advance our sophistication and belly up against those cyber adversaries. You know, what advancements on the good guy side do we see coming that gives us that leg up? Where do we see us going from here? And what does the security landscape look like in a year from now? What can we count on? And where do we need to be heading to stay fresh and in control? I'll go ahead and start. You know, yes, the show must go on, right? The internet is an integral part of our lives. And as Kathi, you mentioned, you know, computers are literally everywhere. We're surrounded by technology and data. But we do need to fix some things, right? First, I hope that we stop accepting status quo and move from being comfortably numb to getting uncomfortable. You know, I prefer to have a program, an operating system, you know, a new application released without any vulnerabilities than having software vendors adding new features as their priority. You know, let's stop releasing buggy software and spend the time it takes to test and validate before release. This is going to give the good guys a leg up, honestly. And when I think about what does the threat landscape look like a year from now, well, more and more insecure connected devices are going to come to market, right? And more Internet of Things devices brings more security issues, right? I saw one note yesterday that there are 50 billion connected devices today. 50 billion. We need to ensure that security first is the mindset. And we need to ask ourselves too, does everything really have to be connected and on the internet? Do we really need to be collecting all that information and have access to everything all the time? Frankly, I don't think we do. So let's take care of that foundation first. You know, security and privacy has to be the priority. I believe the cybersecurity industry knows that. It's just not an easy problem to solve.
Totally, right? Having building on a secure foundation makes everything built on top of it more secure, more robust, and better. So I think that's really good. And to your point about maybe not everything has to be connected to the internet, I think that would be great. Hopefully it would be cool in the future if a future prediction that I would like to come true is maybe kind of pumping the brakes a little bit on having everything be digitized and kind of, you know, embracing analog again. We'll see if that actually happens, but who knows? To your point about, you know, what will move us forward, kind of the show must go on. You know, this whole conference is about intelligence, threat intelligence, and certainly with CTA's information sharing and making sure that a robust community is made aware of threats and collaborating and working together to make the world better, safer, stronger, et cetera. So I think that's a trend that we're definitely going to see continue. And I think we're talking about, you know, having security as a foundation. I think collaboration as a foundation is also something that should be really important. You know, being able to sort of tackle problems with creative ideas, really preventing gatekeeping in the industry, right? Welcoming everyone, making sure that diversity and inclusion is really fundamental. Practicing empathy, we've mentioned it a few times. That's so big for users, for collaborators, for colleagues, et cetera. And then leveraging knowledge and skills from a lot of different industries and not just security and computer science, right? Kathi, you mentioned that you're an EMT as a background. I'm a journalist. That's my background, right? We've done many things, worn many hats, and here we are at security, bringing our unique perspectives and creative problem solving to the space. So, you know, I think that is going to be really important, and hopefully the industry will be very welcoming to those different sort of ideas and creative problem solving.
And I can't agree with you both more. I mean, you've hit on every topic that I probably was going to mention here to wrap up my part. But one of the things that I wanted to reiterate, and something that I talked about a couple of times during this conversation today, is the need for education and the need for more people to be comfortable with educating others about cybersecurity. I know one of the biggest problems that we run into from the Girl Scout badge perspective is that the leaders aren't cybersecurity professionals, so they don't feel like they're qualified to teach cybersecurity to their Girl Scouts. But that couldn't be farther from the truth. As you read through the materials and you educate yourself and you learn more and more, you already know a lot about cybersecurity because you are all the ones who are accessing technology on a daily basis. So I can't agree with you guys more on what we need to do to move forward. The diversity of thought, the bringing everyone to the table to help us solve these problems, and working together collaboratively with our trusted partners, with other organizations, so that we can look to our future and hopefully start squashing these adversaries as they're getting smarter and smarter and looking for new ways to infiltrate our systems. We can certainly start tackling those problems. And then we also need to start looking at how we tackle the human problems behind those cybersecurity attacks and how we fix it going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Kathi and Selena, I really want to thank you guys very much for being on this panel today. You brought some really insightful points. And I appreciate your comments all around. It was great. And for the virtual audience out there, thank you very much for joining us today, and we'll talk to you later. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you.